This story scares the crap out of me every time I think about it. I was at my grandparents' house one night. My grandmother then came into my room at 3:30 in the morning and told me, "Your grandfather needs your help, get up." This sort of startled me because she's never done anything like this. I go to where my grandfather is right outside the door that goes into the garage, and he tells me that the garage door just went up and down 6 or 7 times, we need to check it out. I obviously said alright and went into the garage, only to find the pull strings that prevent the door from opening, which can only be pulled from the inside, was pulled. He looks at me and says, "We have to go outside to fix it so no one can get in." We then headed outside, and when we rounded the corner to look at the garage, the motion lights came on and there seemed to be scratches on the door. He and I fixed the door and went back to bed. About 2 weeks after this, I was staying there again and woke up at around 2:30 in the morning to hearing stomping in the kitchen, which is very close to my room. I get up and hear the stomps come closer to my door and stop. I figured that my grandfather was adjusting the thermostat. I opened my door to see what was going on, only to find everyone in the house was asleep. All the lights were off. Needless to say, I did not sleep well that night. A few weeks passed and I went over there on a weekend because I had nothing better to do. Since it was a weekend, I stayed up rather late and fell asleep watching TV on my bed with my door opened. It was about 1:30 in the morning, and for whatever reason, I woke up without any reason. I look around and realize that I'd fallen asleep with the TV on. I looked at my door. In that instance, I saw a man-sized figure step out of my doorway and walk down the hall towards the kitchen. I slammed my door shut and stayed up all night. By this time, I was pretty convinced I had a demon or ghost or something in my grandparents' house. I was just relieved that whatever it was in their house wasn't following me. Maybe a month after the last incident happened, I was at my dad's house and I was about to go to sleep. At my dad's, I am on the other side of the house from everyone. It was maybe 10:30 at night and I was about to go to bed. I had laid down, turned my TV off, and was drifting to sleep. Then, outside my door, I heard a combination of stomping and really low sounds. This honestly scared the hell out of me. I, in all my infinite wisdom, decided to see what it was. When I opened the door, I saw the same thing I saw at my grandparents' house. I teared up from fear and left the light on, fitfully trying to sleep. As you can guess, it didn't work well. Maybe a month and a half passed after the last incident. I was at a friend's house and he and I cleaned out his shed so we could just hang out in there and smoke his hookah. He usually has a lot of people over to his house, but this night, it was just he and I. We were smoking hookah and were almost finished. We were just listening to some music and I was just sitting there listening to the music when all of a sudden, a black flash darted underneath my legs, but I did not feel a thing. I started to look around to see if one of his cats came in with us. As I started to look around, I realized there's no cat in the shed. I start to become afraid on the inside, but trying to keep myself outwardly calm. I look up to my friend, who, the look of being close to panic and all, he says to me, "I think something just ran underneath your legs." At this point, I start freaking out because I didn't say anything about it. He told me that he saw it as well. We both ran out of the shed and went into his house and just watched TV until we calmed down and went to sleep. This was the last time anything like this has happened. This was maybe 3 weeks ago. I've been waiting for some time to tell my story. Let me tell you, keeping this to myself has been a special kind of hell. If I ever tell this to an actual person, they would undoubtedly call me crazy or schizophrenic or something. Maybe writing it down somewhere, anywhere, will help to set it straight in my head. Perhaps you guys can help me with a reasonable explanation I'm not seeing. A little background context. When my sister was in utero, she was originally part of a set of twins, but swallowed up. Her twin as the pregnancy went on. It's called a vanishing twin. This will later become relevant to the story, so bear with me. My sister, let's call her M for the purpose of simplifying the story, has always had trouble with sleepwalking. My mom has had her examine several specialists. It's that bad. They've only ever eased the problem temporarily. However, she sleepwalks on the average about 10 times a month. The time this story took place, about a month ago or so, I was home from college for the weekend. I often stayed up late nights and decided to relax a little and watch some series before going to bed. It was about 1 a.m., I'd say. I was lying on my side watching my show with headphones on. I could see the hallway in my peripheral vision. When I next look up, I suddenly noticed my sister standing in the doorway, her eyes half closed. She looked like she was sleepwalking. I took my headphones off and saw her slowly walking towards me. When she gets close, I felt my stomach clench and got the most intense feeling of dread I've ever experienced. She did not look like my sister. Every facial feature was slightly off. The way an identical twin doesn't completely resemble the other twin. What gave it away weren't her physical features though. It was her expression. She had this smile on her face is what I'd guess you call it, since the corners of her mouth were turned upward and didn't look like any smile I've ever seen. It somehow encompassed every awful, evil feeling I've ever experienced, read about it, and imagined feeling. It made me think she was going to start screaming at any moment and never stop. Every single hair on my body raised. She was just staring at me. I noticed, dimly, that her eyes were wide open now. She didn't look like she was sleepwalking anymore. Eventually, I managed to say her name in an attempt to get a response out of her. She then stopped smiling and said, "No, I don't think we've been introduced. I'm Annie." I think I was actually paralyzed with fear when I heard that. Somehow, eventually, I managed to scream and shove her away. My parents came crashing into my room. They thought someone had broken into the home. When they turned on the light, I knew it was Em standing next to me again. Her face looked completely normal. She was awake at this point. She blinked a bit and said she could not remember coming to my room. The reason I was so freaked out: a few years ago, my mom told me about the fact that Em absorbed her twin in utero, but she also told me she had kind of morbidly considered what she would have liked to call her second daughter. She told me she would have called her Annie. The house I grew up in was very strange. My friends did not like to spend the night and said that they had weird dreams there. At night, it often sounded like someone was moving furniture around in the living room. My mom and I randomly smell cigar smoke when no one's in the house. We would catch movement of the side of our eyes and nothing was there. Our dogs would suddenly leap up and follow something with their eyes, or start wagging their tails for no apparent reason. I once had a dream about a man wearing a plaid red shirt with black hair and a mustache, leaning on the fence in the backyard. It was so striking that it just stuck with me for a week before I mentioned it to my mom. She had experienced a dream about the man in the past. We think that might explain the cigar smell. I was once home by myself and washing dishes when I heard the wood floor creaking behind me like someone was walking on it. I spun around, no one was there. I went back to washing dishes and there was a few creaks closer. Turned around and asked whatever it was, please stop. It did. The most unexplainable thing happened one night when I woke up to scratching and rustling noise in my room. I thought that someone had broken into the house was in my room. So I laid still for about 10 minutes as the noise continued. Then music from the box on my shelf started playing. I flipped over in my bed and no one was there. My bedroom door was closed. My dog was standing on the other side of the room staring at the bookcase where my music box was. I got out of bed and saw the drawer had been pulled out, hence the slow scraping noise, and that it had finally been pulled out enough to trigger the music. It was on a flat surface so it couldn't have slowly slipped, and it was too high for my dog to reach, even if he had the capability of being able to bother it. My mom said that people my parents bought the house from had a widowed father with a young daughter. His wife had died from cancer in a home hospice in the house. She said that I was a baby, she would hear me laughing and babbling when I was alone in my crib. And when she would look in the nursery, I would be looking up at something. For some reason, she felt like it was connected to the woman. Not paranormal, but spooky as all hell. I was in high school and still living in the family home in Queensland, Australia. My parents were going away for the weekend and we had just been broken into the previous week, so I was still feeling a little rattled. and specifically asked my sister to make sure she slept at ours that weekend. Of course, I get a text from her at about 11 p.m. on Saturday night saying she was going to be staying at her friend's. So I put myself to bed feeling creeped out and half expected something to break through the door at any minute. It takes me ages to get to sleep, but I must have dove off because the next thing I know, I'm waking up to an intensely loud noise. It takes me a few moments to register that it's music and that it's our stereo blasting at full volume at 3 a.m. Knowing I'm home by myself, I can't figure out why it's on. I know my sister wouldn't come home and turn the stereo on, so I start to panic, thinking someone has broken in and turned the stereo on to freak me out. I desperately grope around my bed in the darkness trying to find my phone, and then realize that for the first time in my life, I did not take my mobile phone into the bedroom with me that night, and I can picture it sitting on the kitchen bench where I left it. I must have had a hit of adrenaline at this point, because for some unknown reason I decided to just go for it. I threw my doors open and screamed my sister's name, hoping that either she will answer me or the intruder will think multiple people are home and get the hell out of there. There's no response. But then the music begins to get quieter because the volume's being turned down. Although, it kinda goes up and down for a bit. I step into the hallway and then around the corner of the living room. I turn the light on, expecting to see someone. There's no one there. I should point out here at our house is 3 split levels, so the rest of the house is darkness. There's about 10 million places for someone to hide. I start to take a few steps into the living room and think about whether to run to the bathroom, to lock myself in, or make a dash down the stairs past the kitchen to grab my phone and get the hell out of the house. I'm about to make a run for it when I hear the stereo volume decreasing down to a very low volume, and I force myself to glance over in the corner at it. I have to look twice at what I see, thinking I was imagining things. A gecko had dropped from the ceiling and landed on the stereo. Turning it on with the impact of the landing, the buttons for volume and on and off were positioned on top of the gecko, and he'd been running over the stereo, probably starting the noise. Hence why the volume had been turning up and down. I think it took me about an hour to calm down after that, and I went through every room in the house before I could force myself to sleep at about 5 a.m. To this day, I have never gone to sleep without someone in the home. That bloody gecko robbed me of my sleeping innocence. I was 10 years old and it was the day before Mother's Day, and my dad had taken my older sister and I to the mall to get her a present. This was like a weeknight though, so the mall was pretty dead aside from a bunch of mall rats, as what my dad calls them. They were just either really old people that sit on the benches and stare at people, or gothic teenagers who have all the piercing and mohawks done. Anyway, the shopping's done and I have to go to the bathroom. My dad and sister wait on the bench and I walk through these double doors that opens up to a long corridor, and they lead to the bathrooms all the way at the end. I walk down and peek inside the bathroom. There were only 2 stalls, but for some reason the main door is propped open. I go in anyway, because I really had to pee. So there I am, sitting on the toilet doing my business when I hear voices coming down the corridor. They sounded like a group of teenage gothic mall rats. I stand up, flush the toilet, and I'm about to open the door when I hear one of them come into the bathroom. I freeze, because I thought it was weird for a guy coming into a girl's stall. There was a moment of complete silence, and then I see a black heavy boots approach my door. Then without hesitation, this guy just starts shaking the door, really, really hard, and violently, all while making some sort of weird animal-like noise. I sat back down on the toilet and almost start crying because I have no idea what's going on. The guy looks in the cracks of the door and I can see he has one of those huge septic rings, and it freaks me out even more. I hear the other guys that are standing in the corridor outside the bathroom say, "Just grab her leg from underneath." And so this guy starts tickling his hands underneath, trying to grab me, but I pulled my legs on the toilet and start hitting his hands with my little purse. Then he goes into the next stall and tries the same thing. The entire time he's like grunting and making weird sounds. I was freaking out. I also couldn't speak for some reason. I was frozen and my mouth couldn't find words. Then I hear one of them say something about a cop car parked out front, so they all leave through a side exit. I sat on the toilet paralyzed with fear, and my squeezed eyes shut for a good 5 minutes, trying to convince myself that all this did not happen. But when I opened my eyes again, I could see the boot prints on the tiles of the floor, and it made me more scared. Finally, my sister comes in asking me why I'm taking so long, and I burst out of the stall, crying my head off and booking it down the corridor back to my dad. Okay everyone, thanks for listening to today's videos. Red Moon will be coming at you with daily videos, so go ahead and subscribe if you like spooky stories. The best way to support the channel is by pressing the like button. I hope to see you in tomorrow's video for another spook. Goodbye for now.